Minnesota, and we've been on this crazy journey of creating this cookbook. It took 5 years to bring to fruition, and I'm really honored to be here in front of all of you. And yeah, it still feels surreal. So we published the book in September, and it still feels like I can't believe we actually pulled this off. So about the thyroid, it's a butterfly-shaped gland in our neck, and it is the boss of so many different functions in the body: metabolism, energy, reproduction, and it's nicknamed the little gland that could. Its thyroid hormones act on every cell in the body, and that's why we're going to talk a little bit more about the common symptoms of hypothyroidism and also lesser known symptoms. But because thyroid hormone affects every cell in the body, that's why you see this full gamut of symptoms, right? And sometimes people's symptoms can be all over the map, and sometimes those symptoms aren't traced back to a thyroid problem. So depression, for instance, oftentimes people are given an antidepressant, or if they're constipated, they're given a laxative. Well, those are two hallmark symptoms of hypothyroidism: weight gain and weight loss resistance, hair loss, difficulty thermoregulating. So sometimes we fall into this trap of isolating or compartmentalizing these different symptoms, when in reality, oftentimes it does point back to a thyroid issue. It is also nicknamed the master of metabolism, and it makes about 5 hormones, but T3 and T4 are the most important for metabolism and energy and staying warm. Those are the 2 hormones that are most impactful to our cells, T3 being the most important. So T4 is the inactive form of thyroid hormone. It's nicknamed the lame duck. T3 is nicknamed the big daddy. But there's a conversion process that takes place. You still need the T4 because we mostly make T3 from T4. So again, it gets into every cell of the body, and we have so many different systems of the body that are dependent upon adequate production of thyroid hormone. So again, here are some of those systems that thyroid acts on. So the brain, the gastrointestinal tract, we'll talk a little bit more about gut function. Glucose metabolism, so people who are dysglycemic or hypoglycemic, or they may swing from hypo to hyperglycemia. There's a relationship between thyroid hormone production and glucose regulation. I mean, at the end of the day, our endocrine system, our hormonal system, all of those hormones are talking to one another and impacting one another. And that doesn't have to be like overwhelming, or like, oh my gosh, I might have an adrenal issue, and oh my gosh, I'm hypothyroid, and oh, my blood sugar is dysregulated. Because when you positively impact the action of one hormone, oftentimes you get a positive ripple effect through your whole endocrine system. Bone metabolism, steroid hormone production. We talked about body temperature regulation, so we can move on to the causes. So in years past, and when I say years, I'm talking decades past, hypothyroidism was thought to be an iodine deficiency. We talked a little bit about iodine. I'm not saying that people today aren't iodine deficient. I think that a lot of people are actually iodine deficient, but it's not the cause of their hypothyroidism, at least for the majority of people. So a few years ago, the medical community was saying 90% of people with low thyroid function have Hashimoto's. Then it went up to 93%, then it went up to 95%, now it's 97%. I mean, at the end of the day, 9 out of 10 people who have low thyroid function do have the autoimmune component of low thyroid, which is Hashimoto's. So iodine deficiency tells a small part of the story, and I often get the question, well, if I do have Hashimoto's, does that mean I don't need to worry about my iodine? And I say, no, actually, at the end of the day, iodine and the amino acid tyrosine is what makes thyroid hormone. So we do need iodine in our diet, whether or not your low thyroid function is an immune modulatory problem or not. Here are some other factors. I won't read these off to you. You can take a look at them. But I want to say that someone can have one of these factors, or 2, or 5. sometimes these compounding factors stack on top of one another, and it can kind of create this perfect storm of hypothyroidism. But these factors can also dysregulate the immune system. So they can lead to hypothyroidism, they can lead to low thyroid function, but they can also lead to immune dysregulation at such stage for Hashimoto's, as well as what's called MAS, multiple autoimmunity syndrome. So the medical community is now saying it's pretty unusual for someone to have one autoimmune condition anymore. Like oftentimes they have 2 or 3. So I was diagnosed with celiac after I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I had previously been tested for celiac and it came back negative. Those tests can often be inconclusive. And I also have alopecia, which is autoimmune hair loss. So I have 3 autoimmune conditions. My mom had 3. My sisters have at least 2. So there is a genetic association with autoimmunity, but that doesn't tell the whole story. We're going to talk a little bit about that too. So again, we already talked about the 97%. Hashimoto's is the most common form of autoimmunity. So we have about 90 plus different types of autoimmune conditions. You've probably heard of things like psoriasis, scleroderma. There's many different types, but underneath all of that is really one disease, which is autoimmunity. And I would say the outlier in that family of 90 plus autoimmune conditions is type 1 diabetes. So type 1, those people have to be insulin dependent, for the rest of their lives. I'm of the belief that even autoimmune conditions as serious as progressive MS can be healed with whole foods nutrition and immune modulation and healing the gut. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Dr. Carrie Walls, WAHLS. So she healed herself from progressive MS with nutrition and supplements and, changing her lifestyle.
But I have to add that I was just contacted by a news reporter with Fox 4 News that wants to do kind of a first-person series on her own health and her own struggles with Hashimoto's. And so she had this aha moment when she went to Dr. Wall's presentation about MS. And what she was talking about is that a lot of autoimmunity has similar root cause, and the power of food to kind of help reverse that is really important to recognize. And so I was looking at the cookbook to see, well, how does it actually line up with what Dr. Walls says? And it's pretty congruent. So if you all are looking at Dr. Walls and eating massive amounts of fruits and vegetables a day, eating more allium vegetables, which we talked about, onion and garlic, eating more mushrooms, for their medicinal properties. So there's a lot of Walls compliant recipes in our book as well.
Well, I'm not a type 1 expert, but I know that people with type 1 need to be on insulin. Type 2, no. It's largely regulated with, the right physical activity and eating the right macronutrient balance and keeping blood sugar as stable as possible. But type 1 it's one of the outliers. So not that people with type 1 shouldn't be eating, someone with type 1 diabetes could certainly benefit from our book from the immune support standpoint. So just really quickly, it's estimated that 30 million women have hypothyroidism, but the functional medicine community has been beating a drum for a long time saying so many people are undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, so they're estimating that the numbers are as high as 60 million. And Hashimoto's is increasing in the male population. So again, symptoms, these are some of the common symptoms. Low body temperature, people have a difficult time thermoregulating. Hair loss doesn't have to be alopecia, it could just be all over diffuse hair loss. Oftentimes women will see any men or women will see the outer third of their eyebrows thin. That's common with hypothyroidism. Weight gain, weight loss resistance, depression, constipation, dry skin, dry hair. There's a term called thyroid hair where women will say, my hair used to be so luxurious and soft, and now it's wiry and thin, and it's called thyroid hair. Lack of motivation, lack of stamina, and then here are some of the lesser known symptoms. So poor reflexes, yellowing of the palms, Light sensitivity. Light sensitivity oftentimes is very concomitant with adrenal issues, but it can also be a hypothyroid symptom, fluid retention, high cholesterol. This is something I really get on my soapbox about. If someone's been diagnosed with high cholesterol, I actually suggest they get their thyroid tested, because when someone's hypothyroid and the metabolism ramps down and the body goes into conservation mode, you could be eating healthy fats and giving a great whole foods diet, but if your body is not, if your metabolic fire isn't burning the way that it should, oftentimes that results in high cholesterol. So it's not that you have a bad diet necessarily, it may be that your body is not utilizing those fats and cholesterols the way that it should, so it results in high triglycerides and high cholesterol. So Lisa and I feel that nutrition is ground zero. This is why we wrote our book, and I'm not going to read this quote by Dr. Mark Hyman because I want to move along, but whole foods nutrition really is ground zero. And when I say whole foods nutrition, I'm also talking about the gut healing that should take place for anybody who has an autoimmune condition, but also if you're hypothyroid, you want to make sure that you have healthy digestion so that you're absorbing the nutrients that Lisa and I outline in the book that are so supportive to thyroid and immune nutrition. So you could have, again, you could have a great whole foods diet, but if you're not absorbing that beneficial nutrition, you could still be hypothyroid.
How do you change that?
Let's get into that. Let me get through these slides. I just have a couple more, and then I'll come back to your questions. So, again, every cell of the body has receptors for thyroid hormone, and it's not difficult to understand how a nutrient-deficient diet could result in hypothyroidism and interrupt that cellular communication. That second paragraph is actually a quote from our book. So, when Lisa and I decided to write this book together, my first thought was, I knew that she was going to create these killer recipes. I mean, there was no doubt about that. I had eaten her, food many times, and I know that she makes it so simple and straightforward and delicious. From a reader standpoint, so the first thing I said to Lisa was, I don't want anybody looking at our cookbook and going, oh, this is just another cookbook. Like, how do I know that these recipes are uniquely thyroid and immune supportive? So we spent weeks digesting and researching the most thyroid supportive nutrition and the most immune supportive nutrition and where that overlaps. And then we created this really nerdy, pretty sophisticated ranking system for the most thyroid and immune supportive nutrition, and then foods rich in those nutrients, not just mediocre sources of those nutrients, but foods that are rich in those nutrients. And we created this scoring system or this ranking system, and we laid it out in a chart. We broke it down by vegetables, leafy vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, etc., which resulted in, this is just one page of that research. It's actually 5 pages long, but this is, what you're looking at is one page of the springboard for the cookbook. Lisa took all this research and created the recipes from that research. And I just want to quickly highlight minerals. So I really love talking about how supportive minerals are to the thyroid. It is also, dependent upon vitamins and amino acids, but there's so much good research showing how beneficial minerals are to thyroid function. And I just want to highlight 3. So on that little 3x3 chart, it shows 8 of the supportive minerals, but the 3 that I love to talk about are selenium, zinc, and iodine. So we've talked a little bit about iodine. Iodine and tyrosine help to make thyroid hormone. Zinc and selenium are non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned. And we take a food-first approach. If someone wants to supplement with these minerals, that's fine, but our thought is that we try to get as many of them from your diet as possible. So they help to reduce thyroid antibodies, they help to convert T4 to T3, they help to raise T3, they're just so beneficial. So I kind of consider selenium, zinc, and iodine sort of the 3-legged stool of those 8 minerals. This slide is just a regurgitation of the chart 2 slides ago. So this is actually how it was laid out in the cookbook. This is it's the same information, just presented a little bit differently, but it shows you just how many supportive nutrients are in the ingredients. And then this is my last slide. This is one of our most popular recipes from the cookbook. It's the Asian lettuce wraps. And if you look down at the bottom part where there's that purple call out, so on all of our recipes, with the exception of maybe a couple of the beverages, which would probably be consumed as part of a meal anyway, we outlined all of the supportive nutrients for that particular recipe. And then finally, if you look over to the right of that, you'll see the little icons, the green circles. So many people who've been diagnosed with hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's may have tried a paleo or an autoimmune paleo diet, or they may be on an elimination provocation diet. So we knew that a lot of those people would be picking up our cookbook or considering our cookbook, and we wanted to make sure that we met people where they were. So in addition to the painstaking but fun process of developing and writing the recipes, we also wrote adaptations for, it's already gluten-free and dairy-free, but if someone's on a paleo diet or an autoimmune paleo diet, most of our recipes are either compliant as written, or we've written adaptations to make them compliant. So, it's almost 1 o'clock, and if anyone needs to leave, you're not going to hurt our feelings. Lisa and I are going to stick around for Q&A, and then we're going to go out and, is there an issue with, pardon?
Bad news on the
Okay.
technical difficulties with their mobile payment process. If this is passing those other, you might be able to sound, and I'd be glad to walk you around.
Okay. And, well, I mean, JCCC has been so wonderful to host us here, and well, you guys get to choose, but I mean, it's available online. I would prefer that if you do want the book, that you purchase it through them, because they're hosting us for this event. But if someone needs to go and they don't have, so thyroidcookbook.com, you can get it on our website. But oh, right, right, okay.
Can we pay cash?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think they'll say no to that.
The old-fashioned way.
$29.95.
Is that the online price too?
It depends on where you buy it online. So, yes.
Okay, so I thought I should tell my story because I came to hear Lisa. Lisa was just actually presenting when I was giving a class to the local food class. And I had no idea anything about thyroid, so I heard her telling the signs and symptoms, so I was like, oh, okay, oh, that sounds like me, oh, that sounds like me. So she told us Jill's name, or, so I went to Jill's blog, because she's the health coach, and I found this printout of what you should take to your doctor to get these tests run. So I ran had the doctor actually read, although she'd never heard of them, she'd never ordered them before. And so then I spent the next third, and plus Donald Trump's cholesterol is 230, mine's over 300, so that made a lot of sense for me. And anyhow, I struggled for the last 3 weeks to try and read these and interpret these. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, my levels are off, so we'll see what the doctor says.
Yes.
When y'all talked about lentils, regardless of the color, do they have the same level of iron in them?
I think they do. I think that the red lentils have more of the carotenoids that Lisa was talking about, but all legumes, beans, lentils, pulses, and Lisa can probably answer this question better than I can, but for the most part, they're pretty equal in their protein and carbohydrate content. They're about 50-50, and I think all of them are iron rich, if that's not, yeah.
That question.
I do get it.
Because I feel like I have IBS. I mean, I know I have IBS. I take probiotics and I take digestive enzymes, but my stomach, I mean, I never know what I'm gonna get,
Well, I could talk for 2 more hours about gut healing. Not that it's that complicated. I just want to say, like, a lot of people get what I call analysis paralysis around gut healing. They're like, oh, do I take a digestive enzyme? Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I do the GAPS diet? Do I do the specific carbohydrate diet? And they just, a lot of people have difficulty moving forward because there's so many different opinions about how to heal the gut. My opinion is that, and many in the functional medicine community agree. I mean, I'm not a licensed healthcare practitioner, okay? I'm not a doctor. But when I say the functional medicine community, I'm talking about doctors in the functional medicine community who, blog frequently and have great informative newsletters and do Facebook Live events and talk about all of this stuff. So many in the functional medicine community have said that an elimination provocation diet is the gold standard for healing your gut. Now it's not a panacea. There's other things that you want to consider. There's a chapter in the book on how to do an elimination provocation diet, and it's very inclusive. You'll see some iterations of an elimination provocation diet that include a shorter list of foods than what we included in the book as far as what you would eliminate for 3 weeks. I wanted it to be as inclusive as possible because anybody can do anything for 3 weeks. And a lot of our recipes are elimination provocation diet friendly. There's a lot of resources online for elimination provocation diet, meal plans and recipes. And I mean, it's at the end of the day, the foods that you can eat on an elimination diet is longer than the foods that you can't eat. So you go on this 3-week elimination diet where you eliminate specific foods and food groups, and then at the end of that 3 weeks, you systematically reintroduce one food or food group at a time and see if you have a reaction. And you wait about 3 days. And, the first question out of most people's mouths is, well, what am I looking for? And I say, it can really run the gamut. It could be headache, it could be a rash, it could be irritability, it could be extreme fatigue, it could be bloating, it could be racing heart, anxiety. So you really tune into the body and you see what happens over those 3 days after you reintroduce that one food or food group, and then you move on to the next one. And then, it's a systematic process. But if you don't react to a particular food or food group, then that one's back on the table. So at the end of 3 weeks, you get a lot more wiggle room. It's not like you stay on this incredibly restricted diet for that whole time.
Okay,
So
people over there. Okay.
So I'm gonna come to you in just a second. And I know that we're a little after 1 o'clock. There are some really amazing gut healing supplements like glutamine and collagen gelatin. You can get collagen gelatin from a supplement or from bone broth. I prefer people make the broth. That collagen gelatin and also glutamine, which is an amino acid, helps to turn over the cells of the epithelial lining. So when you consider that the lining of the gut, those cells turn over, in a healthy human, they turn over about every 5 days, which is incredible. So when you give it some TLC and you take out those primary antigens on the elimination provocation diet, and you introduce a good multi-strain probiotic, glutamine and collagen gelatin, however you want to get it, it is amazing what can happen in less than a week. I've seen it happen over and over. I want to get to her question and then I'm going to come to you. Go ahead.
Is there any truth to, if you are on thyroid supplements, not to eat kale in the morning when you take your supplement because it already has a little iodine and it might interfere with your absorption? Because I have to take the thyroid supplement, but I love kale and I fell in love with kale with eggs.
Yeah.
And then I heard that and I was like, but it might be affecting my absorption of my medication. Is there any truth to that?
So when you say thyroid supplements, are you talking like thyroid hormone replacement, like a pharmaceutical? Because there's a lot of thyroid supplements out there, like over the counter. Yeah, that's okay. Well, as a non-licensed healthcare practitioner, I'm not really supposed to speak to thyroid drugs. However, so I'm going to answer your question with another question, which is, are you concerned about the goitrogenic aspects of the kale? Are you concerned about
The what?
goitrogenic, that it's a goitrogen, or, okay, so kale is a goitrogen, and a lot of people are afraid of things like kale, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli. There's a whole chapter in the book titled The Myth of Goitrogen. So for a long time, we've been told not to eat those foods because they contain compound called goitrogenic compounds, and the root word of goitrogen is goiter, right? So goiter is an enlargement of the thyroid gland, and it can inhibit the body's ability to make thyroid hormone. So we've been told for a long time to not eat those foods, but there's no science that backs that up. Those were the studies on goitrogens were done on animals. They were not done on humans. And we talked about this last night, and I love talking about this because those foods, including kale, which is considered goitrogen, are so immune supportive, right? So if you consider that 97% of people who have low thyroid function have Hashimoto's, they need that immune support, and they also contain some of the most concentrated forms of anti-cancer phytonutrients. So they're anti-cancer, they're immune supportive, and I never bought into it. I never bought into the don't eat the goitrogens. I always kind of, I don't know, just my common sense says, I don't know. I just never stopped eating them. As far as your thyroid hormone medication absorption, I mean, I hadn't heard, there is an association between, I don't even want to speak to it because I feel like this whole goitrogens thing is such a myth, but it's been said that goitrogens inhibit iodine absorption. But if we don't have to worry about goitrogens after all, many doctors have now been quoted as saying, this is, Dr. Datis Karazian said, any practitioner telling people to not eat these foods is outdated. Like, there's no science that supports this. So I would say, I don't think you have anything to worry about, but I have to be careful what I say as a non-licensed practitioner. I don't want to give anybody any direction about when or how to take their thyroid hormone replacement.
I guess I heard it was just don't have that kale in the morning. And I eat kale all day long, but I love it for breakfast as well.
I can hear it, but, okay, I want to go to her question and then I'm going to come to you.
I have a question, but a point real quick about the elimination diet. If you have any stomach troubles, I strongly encourage you to try it out. I'm on my last 3 days of the elimination, so next week I'll start introducing foods. And just what you said, it's not a light bulb day, it just turns on in your stomach, is healed, it's a gradual process, and that's the best thing I've ever done in my life. But just from a stomach standpoint, if you have any problems at all. My question, if you could touch briefly on soil content and what we should, those of us that are here obviously, want the best foods.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to stay away from GMOs and all the
Yeah.
What are our options just
Yeah.
as a normal mom, grocery
Yeah.
shopper, even though I might be in a particular kind of
Yeah.
grocery?
Yeah.
What are my options for heavy mineral-based soil foods?
Yeah.
Good question.
Lisa, are we okay on time?
Let me just
It's
say,
10 after.
we want to be mindful of everybody's time. If anybody needs to leave, we had a glitch. The bookstore was having some technical issues, so I have some books. I have about 10 books if anybody's interested. I can go to the foyer and have those available if anybody needs to leave, and come out and talk to me. We'll do the book thing if you're interested. Otherwise, let's just keep doing, we'll stay here and answer as long as you want to stay.
So Lisa and I met because of our passion for sustainable agriculture. So we met 11 years ago here in Kansas City, working for the Kansas City Food Circle. We were on the steering committee, which, if any of you are familiar with the Kansas City Food Circle, it's a grassroots-based organization that educates Kansas Cityans about whole foods. And coming from, both of my grandparents were farmers, ranchers, and I spent much of my formative years on the farm. So I'm really passionate about this. I'm really passionate about soil, nutrient content of soil, and it is a fact that our soils are not nearly as nutrient dependent as they were in decades past. It's very unfortunate, and I am not a big supplement taker. Even in my work with clients, I don't push a lot of supplements. I feel like there's some non-negotiables for a period of time, but I take a food-based multi-mineral every day. It's the Mega Food Balanced Minerals, and that's the one of the only supplements that I take daily because the thyroid is so mineral dependent. And minerals do, a lot. Magnesium plays a part in over 300 functions of the body. So, it's not just thyroid support. There's a lot of other benefits to getting a well-rounded mix of minerals. But because our soils have become so deficient, multi-mineral is one of the things I do take. I don't take a multivitamin, but I do take a multi-mineral. It does not have iodine in it because of the iodine controversy. When I say controversy, we've talked about how important iodine is for the production of thyroid hormone, but too much iodine can also slow thyroid function. So that's kind of the cosmic joke, right? It's this Goldilocks mineral where you don't want too much and you don't want too little. So you'll find a lot of multi-minerals that don't have any iodine, or if they do, it's like maybe 50 micrograms, right? Not milligrams, but micrograms. So it's a really tiny amount. But, all of the mineral-rich foods that we highlighted, or that we uncovered from our research and all the mineral-rich ingredients that got incorporated into the cookbook, you'll find a chart in there with like magnesium and then, all those foods that are outlined. But at the end of the day, I do supplement with a multi-mineral.
And that was really kind of my question, because I know you don't use supplements, you only use a few of them, and that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Because if you, really feel if you're 90 to 95% plant-based, even if certain foods don't have as many minerals as they used to, 90% of your diet is mineral-based.
Yeah, you're probably getting enough if you're absorbing them, When I say you, I'm talking generally, if someone's absorbing. I'm gonna come back to you. This woman had a question.
I actually had a question because I have had my thyroid checked every year, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year from different doctors. Your general practitioner and then your OBGYN. They always check it, and every single time they say my thyroid's fine. But it kind of surprises me. Do you think they're wrong? Probably. Why? Do you think that goes under or misdiagnosed very frequently? I was just curious. Do you think it goes under or misdiagnosed very frequently?
Oh my gosh, all the time.
Yeah, it seems like it's happening to me. Because I have all the symptoms. I have all the symptoms of a thyroid problem, but I cannot get a diagnosis from.
So
Great.
This is also on my blog.
Uh-huh.
So you can find it for free, but there's also a chart in the cookbook about thyroid testing and the functional thyroid panel. And what I mean by that is 2 things. Number 1, too many doctors are only testing TSH. That's all they test, and they'll say that's all you need. The TSH value will tell us whether or not you're hypothyroid. TSH tells a very